medicine itself is kind of nebulous.
My brain is just wired differently.
You're feeling symptoms that the tests aren't showing exist.
People need to hear your story.
Welcome to Major Pain. I'm your host, Jesse Mercury, and this week we have a fantastic episode for you with Hannah discussing Vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. EDS has to be the disease that we've covered the most on the Major Pain podcast, but believe it or not, we've never discussed the vascular form. This is a rare genetic disorder that affects connective tissues, leading to fragile blood vessels and organs, which can result in serious complications like ruptures. So this form of EDS does affect the internal organs more than the hypermobile form that we've discussed most in the past. And as you'll hear from Hannah today, this leads to some difficult decisions, like the necessity for her to undergo a hysterectomy at the age of 19. Hannah will also talk us through all the comorbidities she lives with and the surgeries that those have required. But I'm sure you'll be just as charmed as I was by Hannah's sunny disposition and amazing attitude. A quick note about the recording of this episode, it was affected by some heavy winds. Hannah was sitting outside and the wind kept on blowing. That does affect the audio quality at a couple spots, and if you're watching the video version, you will see Hannah holding onto her phone so it doesn't blow away. But that doesn't take anything away from the amazing content in this discussion that I'm so excited to share with you. This week, for the first time ever, I didn't edit the conversation on this podcast. And I also didn't do the write-up. I'm so excited to say that this week those tasks were completed by Trisha Schmidt and Casey McKenzie. Thank you so much. This is such an exciting development for the podcast, having some help in producing it. This partnership is off to a fantastic start. Thank you both so much. It is so helpful. I also have some updates to share with you before we jump into our episode with Hannah today. I heard from a previous guest with an amazing email that I wanted to read to you. This is from Danny, who was on a recent episode titled, "Every time this baker eats, she risks intense abdominal pain." Danny told us all about her mystery illness and her quest to uncover the cause. Danny writes, "Hi Jesse, hope all is well with you and that the podcast is going great. I've been really enjoying the recent episodes about diabetes and bipolar 1. Just wanted to pop on over here to thank you for being a part in giving me the push I needed to start actively seeking doctors, even some new ones, and answers again, and really try to continue to figure out what's going on with my health. After many new tests and many new doctors, I am happy to report that we are as close as we've ever been to a formal diagnosis. After seeing a new rheumatologist and having quite a few new symptoms pop up in the last few months, we ran another autoimmune panel, and my ANA is not only still positive, but my titer has multiplied 4 times the amount it was in November of last year, and my inflammation markers have increased dramatically. He also did an X-ray which determined I have osteoporosis in my SI joints, and that my spine is comparable to that of someone who has been in a car crash or carried 7 pregnancies. Definitely not the joints of a 25-year-old. Obviously, the rheumatologist flagged this immediately, and as of yesterday, has diagnosed me with an undifferentiated mixed connective tissue disease, and confirmed that this has been an autoimmune disease all along. He suspects spondyloarthritis or enteropathic arthritis. Both of these diseases mimic lupus and IBD, such as Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, and he is sending me for a full-body MRI to see the rest of my joints within the next month or so. Even though this isn't a specific diagnosis, and it'll still be a little while before we figure out exactly which mixed connective tissue disease it is, it was extremely validating to hear that this has never been in my head and is an actual physical condition, and we will have a treatment plan one day soon. Thank you so much for having me as a guest on your podcast and the community you've built around it for supporting the feeling of, I shouldn't have to live like this, which pushed me to start getting checked out again. Your podcast directly correlated to finally putting somewhat of a name to what I've been struggling with for my entire adulthood, and I cannot thank you enough for that. If you ever question if what you do makes a difference, let me be walking proof that it does. Thank you so much again, and I hope all is well as a newlywed. Sincerely, Danny. Danny, thank you so much. Wow, I'm trying not to get emotional as I'm reading this. I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to find out what your official diagnosis becomes. And as I responded to Danny in this email, when you get more firm information, we'd love to have you back on the show to hear about these updates in person. Other exciting progress is being made behind the scenes. As Andy and I discussed a few months back, we have started the Undiagnosed Disease Fund, raising close to $10,000 to purchase genetic testing for individuals with undiagnosed illnesses. Testing is complete for the first 2 individuals, and we're getting it started for the third. I had a really promising phone call yesterday with one of these people and a genetics counselor. There has been something uncovered that is unclear. It's a variant of unknown significance, but it is opening a path to a new diagnostic potential. So I got my fingers crossed, hoping that this leads to something. When these individuals get to a point in their journeys where they're ready to share them, I'm so excited to have them on the podcast and tell you all about what we've been doing. I also just saw this comment on YouTube that I wanted to share with you. This is from Preeti's episode discussing her premature birth at 24 weeks. This comment says, "My premature son is coming out of the hospital in a few days. He was born at 23 weeks and 4 days, and I can say he is an absolute miracle and is doing really well despite having 2 cardiac arrests. I enjoyed this podcast and found this very insightful and helpful." To this commenter, I'm thrilled to hear that your son is doing well. That's incredible. And I just wanted to share another thank you to Preeti for sharing her story. And it's so powerful that your story, Preeti, is now giving some strength to this mother going through something so difficult. Another reminder of why I love making this podcast. If you're enjoying this show, I would love your support to keep it going. A great way to do so is to join our Patreon community, where you can sign up to support this show with monthly financial contributions, starting at just $2 per month. There are 3 tiers of support, $2 per month, $7 per month, and $25 per month. Everyone gains access to monthly bonus episodes, usually featuring myself and my wife, Andy, although we've been so busy recently, we've been doing some catch-up episodes with some friends. I just recorded a second bonus episode with Sunny, 2 in a row. Sunny and I have been having so much fun chatting together, and I found out that she finished watching Star Trek Voyager, and I just had to talk to her about it. So that's coming out very soon. That's been recorded. Andy is still super busy right now, but as soon as things calm down, we'll be getting her back on the bonus podcast as well. Plus, there are other gifts for our various tiers. There are Major Pain coasters and tote bags made by my mom. You'll get special recognition on the show and in the end credits. And speaking of, extra special thank you to our Patreon producers supporting this show at the highest tier of $25 per month: Steve Kavanaugh, Chris Fowler, Trish O'Brien, and Hipster Leia. Another great way to support this show is by signing up to participate in research studies and surveys through Rare Patient Voice. This is an awesome program where you can be paid for your time to share your expertise about living with your own diagnosis. An average of $120 per hour. Check it out at rarePatientVoice.com/majorpainpodcast. There are several more great ways to support this show. You can learn all about all of them on our website, majorpainpodcast.com/support. As we jump into our episode with Hannah today, I will remind you that I am not a medical professional. Please do not take any medical action based off what you hear on this podcast without first consulting your doctor. And with that, let's chat with Hannah about vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Hannah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So excited to talk to you today. You have a form of a disease that we've covered many times, but never this form, which I'm so excited to learn about. I've had questions about this for years. But before we get to that, let's get to know you a little bit. So Hannah, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, I am from Tennessee, and I recently turned 22. So like any other 22-year-old, I do enjoy going out and dancing and having a fun night with my friends. But I mostly enjoy spending time with my cows. I love cows and making them pets, or really just anything outdoorsy and hiking, just all of that. I love it.
Yeah, amazing. I know you're sitting out by a lake right now,
Yes.
Getting some fresh air, which I'm jealous about. When you go out and party, what sort of music do you like? What's your scene?
I listen to a little bit of everything. I do enjoy like country swing dancing, but I also just enjoy just dancing crazy with my girlfriends. Sorry, the wind is kind of...
Yeah, we've been working on trying to get a good connection, so we moved out to this spot, and now we have wind to contend with. But the connection at least is stable, which is an upgrade. So thank you for your flexibility today as we try to make this all work.
Well, thanks for your patience.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really excited to chat with you. So Hannah, let's get into your story. What is your major pain?
So I have the vascular form of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, along with its other comorbidities like Chiari malformation, tethered cord syndrome, MCAS, and POTS.
Wow. Okay. We've talked to so many people with EDS over the years. Mostly the hypermobile form. I know we've covered the classical form as well. I don't think we've ever talked to anyone with the vascular form of EDS. What is the vascular form of EDS?
So I'm not exactly sure what exactly causes it. All I know is that it poses different from other forms of EDS in the sense that it attacks all of the hollow organs and all your veins, your blood, and a little bit more in your skin.
Interesting. The hollow organs. What are the hollow organs?
Stomach, liver, kidneys, lungs, for women, the uterus, intestines, any organ that can hold anything.
Wow. Okay. So EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, is a connective tissue disorder where all of the connective tissue in your body, everything that holds everything else together, your collagen, can be affected. People are often extra bendy, extra flexible. Are those things that you live with as well?
I do. I have some of that bendiness that I can do, but not like other people. Like, I'm not double jointed in my arms or anything, but I do have some hypermobility.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, hypermobility. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. And then on top of that, you have the vascular form. It's affecting your hollow organs. What are the risk factors of that?
So there is a lot more risks with the vascular form of VDS, especially in women. I know for me, it was more so attacking my uterus. So it was not showing any signs of like, oh, your uterus looks off or anything like that. Everything looked normal in all the scans and everything. They never showed any abnormalities. Everything, doctors would say I look healthy. However, it poses more risk as it thins out the lining of all of your hollow organs, and it can increase clotting or major bleeding, and it's just has different effects on different organs. For me, it affected my uterus the most.
Wow. It sounds kind of scary to have something affecting your body in places that you can't see and might not necessarily know that there's an issue until it really presents itself. Is that a fear that you live with?
It is. It's so far my experience with it, it kind of developed slowly. I didn't have any symptoms of anything. And if it's okay, I do want to talk a little bit about how it affects women.
Absolutely.
A little more.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
For me, like, my periods were perfect. Everything was fine, predictable. And up until I started becoming symptomatic, and it was little bits here and there that would start to show like, okay, I'm starting to have more pain when I have a period, or I'm starting to get a fever when I have a period. And then it started going to where my bleeding would last up to a year, constantly heavy.
Your bleeding would last up to a year? You'd start a period and it would just never end for a year.
Maybe go a year without one, and then I'd have one last 6 to 8 months. So It kind of started showing itself. It wasn't like an abrupt 0 to 100 on how severe the symptoms got. But the heavy period was the least of the concern, where that I started having other issues, such as genuinely being sick every time that I would have one. So I started doing research, and I read a lot about how the vascular form of EDS can lead to uterine rupture, even without being pregnant or without having a kid or anything. And it can pose perfectly healthy and then just turn overnight. So I didn't want to take that chance. So I made the decision to have a hysterectomy a few years ago when I was 19.
Wow.
To prevent that.
How old were you when these symptoms started with your period?
I would say I was about 16. I was diagnosed with Chiari, POTS, and Ehlers-Danlos at 13, but we never pinpointed what form until later on. Whenever I had my first Chiari decompression surgery, a few months after that is when things started to change a little bit more. And then it wasn't anything in connection with the surgery itself. It was more so just the more I age, the more my body develops, the more symptomatic the EDS became. But when I was first diagnosed, I didn't have any symptoms.
Wow. I'm shocked that you were diagnosed at 13 with all of these diseases that a lot of doctors sort of brush off and don't necessarily know that much about. We've talked at length on this podcast about EDS and POTS, and we've also covered Chiari malformation a few times. These are things that are very difficult to get diagnosed with. When did your health journey start? It sounds like it started before you were even 13 years old.
So actually the opposite. Before I was diagnosed, I had a very active lifestyle. I was playing multiple different sports through elementary school and middle school. I played basketball and touched in softball, cheerleading. I was extremely active, and I grew up on a farm, so I was always doing who knows what on the farm that would get most people injured, and I had no fear of anything. I was constantly on the go. My brother, however, he was having these crazy symptoms since he was little and into his high school years. He's 5 years older than me. He was having these seizures and he was completely awake during them. And my mom, she's a paramedic, and she was like, okay, doctors are telling him that there's nothing wrong and that he's crazy.
No.
And he saw multiple specialists, Mayo Clinic, Emory, everywhere, and eventually got the diagnosis of Chiari, which we found out is genetic. So I still didn't have any symptoms whenever my brother was going through all of his, but we did know that he had it. So I had a little bit of knowledge on it. At 13, I actually got a concussion, a double concussion, and it's almost like that never went away. So I went from being 100% healthy. You would never guess I had any condition going on, and a concussion happened, and then it made my Chiari more symptomatic. So then 3 years later, symptoms just kept progressing, and having a little bit of knowledge on it from seeing my brother go through it first. My mom actually told the doctors, hey, this is in our family. You do need to check her cervical spine to see if she also has it. Sure enough, I did. So that's how I got the diagnosis, was because my mom had a little bit of knowledge on how to deal with the doctors.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. It's so incredible to have your mom be a medical professional and be able to connect these dots for you. Can you remind our listeners who may be unfamiliar, what is a Chiari malformation?
So a Chiari malformation is whenever the cerebellum tonsils, which are the tonsils at the base of the brain, right around your brainstem, slip out of the skull and into the spinal canal, putting pressure on the spinal cord and the brainstem itself, which your brainstem controls every system in your body. So it can throw any symptom out there. There's no black and white. If you have Chiari, you will have this or you won't.
Yeah. And how does it affect you?
It's affected me a few different ways. Whenever I was 13, when it first started, I started having one-sided weakness and numbness. So I couldn't feel or do anything with the right side of my body. And I'm right-handed, so I could not write anymore because I didn't have the strength to grip a pencil. So I had to learn to be left-handed for about 3 years because doctors kept giving me the runaround. And after that first decompression, I didn't have really any of those symptoms come back until I developed a tethered cord and instability of my spine.
Yeah. And tell us about that tethered cord. Remind us what that is.
That's whenever the spinal cord itself within the canal attaches itself to the tissue lining the bone. And it has a lot of risks because it can kind of make a puddle of spinal fluid, the CSF, and lead to some blockages and more pressure, which ironically is also sometimes what causes the tethered cord in the first place.
Yeah. And these things often come together. Tethered cord, Chiari malformation,
Almost
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Yeah, it seems like something about having, issues with connective tissue leads to these other things, or who knows what causes what.
Right.
And we do know that vascular EDS is genetic. That's one of the genetic forms of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Have you had genetic testing?
I have not. The research that I've done, it is extremely inconsistent. There's a lot of patients that will have it, truly have it, and they'll test negative time after time after time. And the testing being, if you have the vascular form, the testing is extremely painful because we can feel almost everything internally. The way that you feel a sensation on your skin, I can feel that with my veins, my bones, my organs, which is really cool. So like getting a needle stick, I don't feel it go through my skin, but I feel it in my vein and I can tell you where it's at. I can tell you every valve that I have right around here from getting IVs, but it is painful to test for the people that do have it through a geneticist. And it's inconsistent. It doesn't always give a black and white yes or no.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah, I mean, I've had genetic testing, and my genetic testing only had one variant of unknown significance. But then when I had carrier testing, it showed something that has been actually medically relevant to me. And according to the geneticist, that's not possible. So in my own experience, the things that are black and white in genetic testing have shades of gray. And,
they do.
I've since then talked to other doctors who acknowledge this, that yes, we don't know as much as we wish that we did about genetic testing. The beauty of genetic testing is that there are things that are black and white about it. And that's pretty rare in medical science. But as you just mentioned, there are still gray areas that, we don't necessarily know. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. I have not heard that before, that there were gray areas with the vascular EDS. I know
especially the vascular EDS.
Okay, yeah. So this
Usually,
is great
and you wouldn't think it, but a lot of times you would expect vascular EDS to show up in the blood And that's what most geneticists will go to test. And if you Google anything about it, it'll just make it sound so simple of, yes, you can just get your blood drawn and it'll show up. And that's not the case. Usually vascular EDS shows up more in bone marrow than it does in your blood. So again, that goes back to, it complicates the testing process even more. And all the on paper diagnosis, at least in my case, would do is just to be on paper. So my neurosurgeon and my primary care and other doctors on my teams have, pretty much narrowed it down that this is the form of EDS that I have. And if it's not for whatever reason, then my body is posing as it. So it doesn't change the treatment of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And, my big diagnosis, mast cell activation syndrome, is a clinical diagnosis. We tested me over and over and couldn't find the proof. So
I'm still going through that. They still keep telling me I don't have it.
Oh, really? Yeah, because MCAS, that's part of the POTS EDS triad. A lot of people with EDS have MCAS as well. Do you have any symptoms that you suspect might be MCAS related?
I do. I have for a long time, actually. Before I was ever symptomatic or knowing that I was symptomatic, I had really bad issues with my skin. And I would have these hives or these completely open sores, and I've got scars from them. And it wasn't acne. And they kept throwing other big name diagnoses at me, and it never was the case. And using skincare products actually would send my MCAS into a flare-up. And I know that now, so I can't use any actual skincare products on my face or really much on my body, so I use natural oils instead. Because if not, then I will get hives. And same with medication. If I take ibuprofen, I will go up in hives, or my throat will start to close up for whatever reason. I'll wake up in the night, nothing I'm allergic to, because I don't really have any allergies except for wasps and shrimp. And I'll just wake up in the night sometimes having a hard time breathing or completely hives, anaphylaxis. So the MCAS is definitely a curveball.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yes, MCAS, that absolutely 1,000% sounds like MCAS. Take it from someone who has MCAS.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, as you were talking about with vascular EDS, if you test blood versus bone marrow, you might get a different result. That's the way MCAS is. And my other diagnosis, small fiber neuropathy, which is a skin punch biopsy, and it depends on where you do the biopsy, whether or not you're going to get the right result. MCAS, it depends on, the severity of the flare-up and the timing after the flare-up to when you draw blood as to whether or not you can get a positive test result. And I've never gotten one. We've never been able to definitively say on paper that this is it. But the medication got me out of a wheelchair in a couple of months. So it's like, that's a pretty good sign that we have the right diagnosis. Do you have a doctor who's willing to kind of go on this journey with you and figure out whether or not MCAS might be a piece of the puzzle?
Yes, I do. I see Dr. Jeffrey Greenfield in New York. And he is absolutely incredible. And he kind of put all of the pieces together for us, even though he's a neurosurgeon. So the MCAS and the POTS is not exactly in his specialty, but he is so knowledgeable on the EDS and the Chiari and the tethered cord, the neuro conditions that I do have. He has been able to kind of piece it together, along with, I have seen cardiologists that have been able to definitively say, yes, you do have POTS. But as far as the black and white on paper testing, I don't feel the need to go to a geneticist. My neurosurgeon, who treats all the major stuff, he treats my body as it appears, as it shows, so that he is completely in agreement that I do have all of these issues.
Yeah, totally. And honestly, I think that's something that's being lost in medicine right now and is critically important, that test results are not black and white. Anyone who's gone through a long medical process knows that. And it's more important what is working for your body. It's more important the way your body is presenting. And it sounds like there's extremely clear evidence that you have the right diagnoses here, especially the way that your uterus has been affected. It sounds like it, I've never heard of any other form of EDS doing that. I'm not a medical professional. I'm just a patient, but I have recorded a lot of these, and that's not something I've ever heard before. And EDS, I think, is the disease we've covered the most on this podcast, the one I've learned the most about from people who live with it. And that's a new one to me. So, I mean, I do know that there is this sort of external societal pressure to have a black and white test result. And that's something that I have felt, and I'm in the same boat as you where I don't have that. But I have enough proof that I was able to get on disability and be officially diagnosed with MCAS.
I'm in the process of that right now with disability.
Oh, yeah. I'm actually in the process of getting off disability, which
Really?
because my medication has been so effective that I've gone back to work full time.
Amazing.
It's
Congratulations.
incredible. Thank you. I'm so thrilled.
Yeah.
And it turns out getting off disability is super complicated. I'm really I'm having a hard time. I keep receiving payments even though I'm overqualified at this point, because getting the message to the Social Security Administration that I'm ready to be off disability, I keep sending in filling out my income, sending in the paperwork. At first, I didn't even know how or where to send that, but I have since figured that out, but I haven't heard back from anyone. And we're going through this time right now when government agencies are being slashed. So I don't even know how many people are checking to see if I should be off disability or not. I do have an appointment. I have an appointment with my local Social Security office in September that I made months ago. It was like a 9-month wait to get an appointment. And so I'm just setting aside all of these payments because I'm probably going to have to pay them back to the government when I get, when I eventually get someone on the phone or someone in person, or I hear back from them that says, hey, we finally received your proof of income that you're overqualifying. Whole thing I did not expect, but getting on disability.
Did you ever get denied disability at first?
Yeah, several times. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know a lot of people with these conditions do, and it's incredible how conditions that are truly disabling, they are denied as disability.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we look fine.
Exactly. And I had to get a lawyer. I was denied twice. I had a hearing, and I lucked out because I had just gotten diagnosed, like within weeks of having my hearing. I'd scheduled the hearing with no diagnosis. And then I got my diagnosis and had the hearing, was able to tell the judge, this is why I'm sick. And I'm starting medication that is helping, and I might be able to go back to work in the future. And, I'm so grateful that happened within like a year, and I'd been fighting to get on disability for like 4 or 5 years or something. And then I finally got it. So yeah, it's worth the fight.
I've
keep
just
fighting.
started the process.
Yeah. Get a lawyer. Lawyers.
I have one.
Great. You're doing it right.
I've got one. And my lawyer is also a nurse. So she has
amazing.
worked with things. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. So, okay, you've been through so much, and I'm still kind of like, it's tumbling around in my brain. I'm trying to piece your story together here because there's just so much that's happened. So 16, you get diagnosed. No, 13, you get diagnosed.
13. Yeah.
16, you start having these symptoms with your uterus.
Yes.
How old are you when you have a hysterectomy? Was that just last year, you said?
I was 19 and I'm 22 now.
19. Okay. A couple years ago.
Wow.
And then you also mentioned some other surgeries involving, is it the cervical cranial instability or no, you said tethered cord.
Both.
Okay.
So I've had
so much happened to you. Oh my God.
Yeah, I feel like it's a whole day's conversation to fill in every blank in detail because it all goes back to also like with my brother and knowing everything that he's gone through. I feel like I wouldn't have the knowledge that I do without seeing it from the outside first. However, yes, I've had 2 Chiari decompressions. I have a fusion. I'm occipital to C3, and I've had a tethered cord release. Along with the hysterectomy, and I do have a port as well, but I don't really count that as a surgery. And we're suspecting some other instability in my spine right now, and just in the process of figuring out if that's what it is.
Wow. And you've already mentioned that just getting a blood draw is very painful for you. So this must have been horrible to go through all these surgeries with a condition that makes your body so sensitive.
Yeah, because think of, you know how it feels if you poke your skin, how you feel that you have nerve endings on your skin. I have those in my veins and everywhere internally, so I feel everything.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Is that a vascular EDS thing?
It is, along with the fact that my veins used to be beautiful. My mom being a medic, she'd be like, man, I would love to stick you and give you an IV, right? Because I had good, juicy veins that's impossible to miss. But once my vascular EDS symptoms started showing, my veins have almost disappeared, and my mom can stick the hardest IV patient she possibly could have. She is incredible. She's been doing it a very long time. But my veins are extremely hard for her to get. And it's not on her. It's just my veins either move or the IV just sitting in my vein, it would just poke through the other end of it or just come out without me moving or anything. So that was one of the reasons that led to getting a port too.
Wow. What is this recovery process like for you when you have a surgery like that?
It's a roller coaster. But how I recover from surgeries with that, the hardest one has been the hysterectomy because it was hollow organs that were affected the most. So it was the most painful surgery. But once I recovered, once everything healed, it was healed and I haven't had any issues since. Whereas like just my incision from surgeries I've had 3 or 4 years ago, it'll still try to open up sometimes. And that's just the EDS, the connective tissue. My body's not glued together like it should be.
Wow.
So I have to pay attention.
This is a lot to go through. At 22 years old, you've already been through so much. And to have a hysterectomy as a young woman, I mean, that must be a very difficult decision and a very emotional thing to go through. Can you talk me through the process of deciding that this was necessary?
I'd love to. Actually, that's something that I was hoping to cover more on here. Whenever my periods became as debilitating as they were, and I had recovered from my first decompression and I was recovering from my fusion surgery, and I was, overall pretty healthy for what my body is now. And I was still missing school all the time. I was still hardly able to do anything because when I was on my period, which was almost constantly, and it was heavy, I was anemic. I was losing blood. I would run a fever. I would feel like I have the flu. I would not hardly be able to move. So part of the decision came into just my general well-being. Okay, well, I feel healthier. Will I have energy to do anything if I have this taken care of? Because my periods felt like they were killing me. And then I started thinking about, well, that kind of takes out having kids in the future, even though there is adoption. But then I started weighing out, okay, with the conditions that I have, I could either decide to be a mom as much as I would love to. And in the moment, I wasn't even 100% thinking kids would be in my future because I was just focusing on keeping my health decent enough. But with my health being as unpredictable as it is it really smart for me to be a mom? Would I want to put my kids through that? If, say my husband, if I was married and had kids, say something happened to him and my kids were fully dependent on me and my body doesn't let me do anything. Or like right now, I haven't been able to drive for over a year. So do I want to have kids knowing that I have these conditions and that I may not be able to support them the way that I should? And my conditions being genetic, do I want to willingly have kids knowing that they will more than likely have the issues that I have and be symptomatic? So it was hard, and it's still hard because now that I am in a long-term relationship with the man that I know that we've talked about it, and that's where things are going. We do plan to get married, and I live with him now. Kids, it's really weird to say, but that's almost brought every emotion back with it. It's like I would love to be able to be a mom to his kids. I would love to have his babies. I would love to raise them. I would love to start a family with him, have both of us connected as one. Like I would love to have that. But it's just not in the cards. And if I had to make the decision again, I would 100%, because I do think that it saved my life in a different type of way, even though it brings other mental struggles.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's so powerful and so important. And this is your story. This is your choice, your journey. It's not like you're saying, hey, everyone should get a hysterectomy.
Yeah, no, I don't recommend it.
No, obviously not. That's not what you're saying at all. You're saying this is where I am. This is what my body needs. And this is the right choice for me, as painful as it is. And I really applaud you for making that choice. And I really applaud you for sharing about it. I mean, these are things that are so personal. And I'm assuming that, people are judgy out in the world. Yes. I'm assuming that you might run into judgment about this from other people. Have you run into judgment from other people about that?
Not as much as you would think. I think it was more so in my own head, like whenever it comes to dating. Before I met my boyfriend now, I was always terrified of that because I understand that being a deal breaker. So I feel like it might have, or maybe other people my age or friends or anything might have kind of been like, oh, why on earth would she do that? Because they don't understand it. But generally, I get a pretty decent response from people in the sense of they're like, good for you for that, thinking of your future kids' well-being over your own. And I'm starting to believe that. I definitely did make the decision for what would my kids be going through. Do I want to put them through that? And also, having the vascular EDS, the main thing that I like to explain to people to show my point of view on the decision is, okay, would you knowingly get pregnant and knowing that you have a condition that can pose as a healthy, strong pregnancy, but even far in the term, like the third trimester, you could have a turn and have to make a decision to either abort the baby to save your life or end your life to save the baby or lose both.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
I did not want to be put in that position knowing that I have these conditions. So I feel like it was just more ethical for me to just prevent it altogether. And if for whatever reason my health were to allow me, and if it's in my future to have kids, I can adopt. But as of now, I don't plan on it. So people have been understanding for the most part.
Yeah. And these are such important questions to ask yourself, especially now where there are places in the United States where that choice is being taken away from the woman and being made by the state, which terrifies me. This should be an individual choice for the person going through it. So, wow, these are such hard things to go through at 22 and younger. I mean, you must have developed you have to have developed so much maturity to go through all of this. What are the ways in which these challenges have changed your outlook on life and on your own self?
That's actually what I'm most thankful for. So I am beyond blessed that, and I'm Christian. I'm not sure if you or the listeners are, but I am, and I am used to struggle with it a lot, but I started to believe whenever I was going through it that God hates me. And I had this horrible outlook on him and the whole world around me. And then I saw my brother going through it, and I was like, God hates me. Why is he doing this to me? And I was in a really dark place. And then coming out of that, I've started realizing and trying to rely on my faith as best as I can. So it has given me a better outlook of, okay, things piece together because I was going through this, because I felt like God was mad at me or was, punishing me for something. I went through this horrible, horrible thing at a young age, and I was so embarrassed by it. But because of that horrible thing, I've now been able to help other patients. So it has helped me tremendously. My neurosurgeon has put me in contact with dozens of patients all across the country going through similar things, and I've been able to help them, but I wouldn't have been able to if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through. So I am extremely proud of it, and I'm no longer embarrassed. And I feel like I can be a good bridge between patient to provider, as I've also been before I was the patient. I was the loved one. I was watching my brother, someone that I love with my entire heart, my whole world, go through it and see him get the runaround and see his life, just, I hate to say coming to an end, but that's what it looked like. And I was terrified. So I can kind of translate the feeling of a patient because I know before I was a patient, I was the relative. So I can translate it into normal terms. So I'm very thankful. I think it's given me a much more colorful outlook on life. And I appreciate the little things so much more.
Yeah, I feel the same way about my illness.
Yeah.
How is your brother doing now?
He's doing good. He just recently had a tethered cord release, and that was his second surgery, but he has stepped in and helping to run the family business, and he's farming, and he's got cows, and he's doing really good now, and I'm proud of him.
Wow, amazing. Do you know if he has a form of EDS as well?
He does have EDS, but we don't know what form he has. His symptoms were mainly put on by the Chiari malformation and then the tethered cord syndrome. But He does have POTS and he does have EDS, and we just don't know how severe or what type he has.
Wow. Yeah. Tell me about your POTS. We haven't talked about this yet. Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, characterized by difficulty in changing your position. If you go from sitting to standing, you can get really, really dizzy. Some people
Or standing to sitting, believe it or not.
Yeah, changes in position. People black out. It's like the blood flow is not adjusting correctly to changes in position. Right. What's it been like for you?
Well, I used to never have a single problem out of it. I never had an issue. Again, I was an athlete. Everything was great. But last March, so March of 24, I got sick with what we think was COVID. Not 100% sure, because I just felt like I was in a very, very bad flare-up of all of my conditions at once for about 2 weeks. So of course I didn't go to the doctor. I mean, I thought it was just a flare-up. The symptoms overlap with COVID and flu a lot with a flare-up. I'm sure you understand that too.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, so I didn't go to the doctor. I was more congested than usual, which is what kind of told me that I had something like a virus or COVID or flu or something going on aside from my usual flare-up. But during that time, I started passing out, just unpredictable. I was actually at my boyfriend's house for that time, and I stayed there because I wasn't comfortable driving back home, as it was almost an hour drive at the time. I wasn't comfortable driving, so I stayed there for the whole time I was sick and the whole time I was passing out, and it really didn't get much better. So I eventually ended up making it home and parked my truck, and I haven't driven since. I pass out. At first I was passing out about 15 to 20 times a day.
Wow. Oh my God.
And I could not feel them coming on. So I'm sure I got a few concussions. I hit my head a lot because I would just fall. But my mom was able to read my episodes before they came on. My boyfriend was too. And he really, this is his first time going through any of this as well. So I applaud him for choosing it and being patient with it and understanding. And he's done tons of research himself. But I started getting some control over the passing out, as I could now feel them coming on. And I could get sitting down and my legs up to help with my blood pressure. So my blood pressure would drop. Lay there for a few minutes and I was good to go. And it would start to get managed a little bit more. And they started putting me on medicine, and they have me on Zoloft, which is an antidepressant, but it's also kind of a jack of all trades. And the only thing that it's really helped with is I get these episodes of adrenal dumping with my POTS episodes, which can mimic a panic attack, can sometimes look like seizures. I'm unaware of where I am, who is around me. I'm just not able to breathe, move, think, hear, anything. Sometimes they look like seizures because I'll be shaking really bad. So the Zoloft has helped with that. But otherwise, I'm not on medication for it. And I've tried my boyfriend doing research on it. He has got me on this anti-inflammatory diet to help, and it has been helping. So I also, through my port, I get IV fluids twice a week. And that does help, but I'm still not 100% episode free. I still have them, but I am able to predict them coming on pretty well in advance.
Yeah.
And I have a service dog. I have a service dog for it.
Oh, great. That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask more about your port, because for anyone who's watching the video version, I can see your port, but it looks like it's it looks like it's healed, like there's skin over it. Is there access to it still?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the port is different from like a PICC line in your arm where you just screw into it. This is under my skin and it's implanted. It can be in here for 10 plus years. I mean, it's good to be in here as long as I keep taking care of it. It's placed surgically. It's got a line that goes through and goes to my heart. But to access it, they take a needle and they just push through it, because right under the skin is the port, and it's like a spongy texture. So it just goes in and it's like this catheter that just feeds the fluid through, and I can keep the needle in. And the access itself, it does hurt. It's a pinch, but it's not as bad as it touching veins or anything, because it just goes into nothing.
Oh, okay. Wow. And I mean, that sounds so handy for someone whose veins are hard to access.
It is 100%.
Yeah. You mentioned that you felt like God was mad at you and that you are a Christian, but then you went through this transformation of recognizing the good that can come from having a chronic illness, your ability to help other people specifically. Yeah. What is your relationship like with God now?
Great. I feel like my boyfriend has introduced me to him in a whole new light, which I grew up in a Christian family. My granddad was a Southern Baptist preacher. But so very Christian family. And so for a while, I just felt like I was almost like, okay, this is all I know. And if God is so great, then why would I be going through this? That was my mentality. But now it's like, okay, he really has put me through this to be able to help other people. And I'm not talking about helping other people find God, because that's a lot of Christians feel like that is their place to do. I just feel like it's my place to help people, and everyone is entitled to their own belief. So I'm not going to go to these other people and try to help them with their, medical journey and involve God in it, because that's for them to find. However, I do feel like I can bring a different sense of positivity just because of the outlook that I have, because I don't feel like I would have that without God. And for that, I'm extremely, extremely thankful. And it's almost ironic the way certain things with my health and people in my life has happened that's reflected like, oh, God did that. So now I'm more than thankful for it over everything in the world.
Wow. And is there a part of you that if you could change your history and take out these illnesses, would you make that choice because of how it has transformed you as a person?
I would.
Yeah.
I don't think I would be who I am if I hadn't gone through it. And I mean, yes, I have my own dreams and my goals. And there's a lot of days where I feel like in my life is at a pause, not being able to drive, not being able to start school or go to work or anything. I'm a stay-at-home girlfriend and I take care of the dogs and I love it. And I live on the lake and it's beautiful. But there's also my own goals that I want to achieve. So there's times that I feel very held back by it, but I wouldn't change a thing because it's kind of given me a new purpose in life, a new mission that's not just career-based. It's a personal goal that makes more impact than going into cosmetology school would ever do. So I wouldn't change a thing, though I wish I didn't feel as bad as I do all the time, but I wouldn't change anything either way.
So it is cosmetology school. Is that what you were hoping to go into before this started?
Yes, and it's something that I'm still trying to go into, and I have been accepted to a school, and it's just a matter of whenever my body is strong enough that I might do that. But I'm also not 100% opposed to not pursuing it. I want to.
Yeah. And chronic illness is not a linear journey. Things change all the time. Yeah, exactly. It's a roller coaster. It goes up and down. And my journey is a really good example of this, where I didn't think I was ever going to be able to go back to work. I didn't think I'd ever be able to have kids. I didn't even know if getting married was on the table for me. I thought that at a point in my life, it looked like I was going to be moving home to have my parents take care of me. And now here I am working full time, just got married. We're talking about having kids.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's because of the medication for mast cell activation syndrome. And if you're still in this journey where you're looking into MCAS, I know from experience how completely disruptive just MCAS can be in your life. And if you're not even taking any medication for that or looking into the low histamine diet yet or anything like that, there's so much to try in the future. And you have so much going on. And I'm not saying that your journey and mine are going to mirror each other. I have absolutely no idea.
Everybody's journey is as extreme as everybody else's. It is. Everyone has their own battles, but someone's worst day is still another person's worst day. And even though it may be different things, it's still equivalent in a way.
Yeah. And I always veer away from comparing people's stories because that's never fair to anyone. But
it's cool to compare like what is consistent in patients and what's different in each patient. It's really unique.
Yeah. And there is a very important comparison when it comes to, presentation and symptoms of specific illnesses. But when we're talking like cross illness, I think that there's a tendency for people to think about like, oh, mine is more severe or less severe. And I try to not let my brain go there. As the host of this show, I try to just look at an individual person's story. Right. But then just thinking about the fact that things aren't linear and one moment in someone's story might not reflect where they are 10 years from now. And It's important to keep your mind open to change, I think.
It can change overnight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. That's what happened to me with all of my issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you're not on any, you mentioned the Zoloft for POTS and no other medication for POTS. Are you on any other medication for the rest of your illnesses?
Not really. So what I've found is because of the MCAS and the EDS, especially the vascular form, if one medication helps one thing, then it makes the other 10 times worse. So it's a constant battle. So I've just decided to say no to the medicine, and I don't want to be treated by medication. I've just learned to gauge my body and learn my body and just read it and take each day as it comes. But I do have this medicine that I take as needed, and it's called dronabinol. And all it is synthetic THC and Tylenol. And it helps. It almost helps. It's given to chemo patients for nausea and appetite.
Wow.
But I found for me, it helps with pain. It helps my body kind of get back grounded with itself, and it work together as one instead of fighting itself. So when I'm in a really bad flare-up, that's what I'll take. And whenever I have surgeries, I've even requested to be on that instead of Oxy or any other narcotic, because it doesn't make you feel drugged or sleepy or weak. It helps your body recover.
Wow. Another thing I've never heard of. I didn't know we even had synthetic THC.
Yeah.
I was, for years when I had no medication because we didn't have a diagnosis, cannabis was my number one pain management. I was just using the real thing because I didn't know there was anything else.
Well, it's not legal in Tennessee for medical purposes either. But this medication is, because it's synthetic.
Wow. Cool. I'm still learning something every episode. Here we are in season 5 of Major Pain, and I'm still learning new stuff.
Yes.
Well, I have one more question for you. If you could go back in time to, let's say, when you were 13 years old, which is about almost a decade now that you've been living with this diagnosis of vascular EDS, along with the other ones that were diagnosed when you were 13. If you could go back to that point in time and bring a message to yourself from your 22-year-old self, everything that you've learned over the past near decade, which has transformed your life, transformed who you are, transformed your relationship with God and yourself, what is the message you'd want to bring back to your 13-year-old self?
So just be patient and to trust the process, and to try to believe in God a little bit more than I did at the time. Because the doctors were telling me, oh, you have this, but there's nothing we can do, or you have it, but it's not causing your symptoms. You're just crazy. Let's send you into psych. You're in high school. You're faking it. I would go back and tell 13-year-old me, don't care about the bullies. Don't care about the doctors who dismiss you, because they're just as bad as the bullies. And listen to God, listen to your mom, and find a good doctor, which she did. And just have trust in the process. And I feel like I do need to tell myself that message even still today, because that is, every time I have something come up, like right now I'm having issues in my neck again, and we're wondering if that's going to result in another surgery. And I'm finding myself still having more days now where it's, oh gosh, how do I even go about this? I feel like I need to take charge of it, when I could just sit back and trust my doctor that I have found, my mom who advocates for me, and God.
Yeah. Wow. I've learned so much from you today. This has been a complete joy. I learned today that I didn't really even know how ports work. So that was,
really?
yeah, because I've never had one,
Yeah. This is my first time too. I've only had it a few months.
Yeah. Well, please stay in touch.
Absolutely.
I have learned so much about MCAS over the last couple of years. So if you ever have questions about that, please reach out to me.
Absolutely.
And if you have updates on your story that you ever want to share on the show, I would love to hear from you again. Yeah. What a powerful story. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing everything that you have about your journey. So much of it has been so personal, and it's really powerful, really impactful. Please tell our audience where people can go to connect with you online, or anything else that you'd like to plug.
I have started up an Instagram page aside from my personal to help other patients not feel alone and just show what life is like as a 22-year-old living with chronic illness, the highs and the lows. And that is on Instagram. It is Beyond the Label 0, I believe. I don't have it memorized, but I can send it to you, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Please send it to me. I'll include a link. I'll tag you on. Yeah, I'll tag you on all the platforms when this goes live. Also,
And
thank you.
I have issues posting right now on that page. Is where I live has no internet. So I'm working on that and trying to get things to upload a little bit better. So the page will be back active as soon as possible. But for now,
Awesome.
you can find it there.
Sounds great. Yeah. And thank you so much for your flexibility today. We've changed locations to get a better internet connection. And then the wind was so strong and you've been, going back and forth, holding your phone in place to keep it from blowing away. So thank you so much for taking the extra steps to make sure that we could record today, because I am so honored and thrilled to be sharing your story. What an incredible conversation. Yeah, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Major Pain. I'm Jesse Mercury, the creator of this podcast, with support from Trisha Schmidt and Casey McKenzie. Artwork by Egg Salad Salad. Our theme music is the song Time Machine from my synthpop album Sci-Fi, now streaming everywhere. Join our community on social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, all at Major Pain Podcast. If you have questions or comments you'd like to share with myself, our guests, or our listeners, send an email to majorpainpodcast@gmail.com. You can also head to our website to learn more about this show, support its creation, or leave a comment on any episode at majorpainpodcast.com. Major Pain is supported by our listeners on Patreon. Thank you to our $2 per month supporters, our $7 per month patrons Naomi Adele Smith, Sonny Roberts, Kelsey Matson, Alexandria Henderson, Justin Minnick, Heather Muncie, and Robert, and our $25 per month producers Steve Kavanaugh, Chris Fowler, Trish O'Brien, and Hipster Leia. Learn how you can support this podcast while receiving special recognition on the show, gifts, and monthly bonus episodes at patreon.com/majorpainpodcasts.